In one of my earlier jobs, I had a leader say, if I get you another proposal manager, how many more proposals can you do? My answer was none. My answer was, I will do the ones I'm already doing even better. So if the tool is giving us our time back, we owe it to ourselves to take that time. Speak with your leadership. You brought me a tool, it gave me more time. Does that mean I can do more proposals? No, it does not.
Welcome to the Optimize podcast, brought to you by VisibleThread. We bring you the best and latest insights for everything from government contracting on topics such as BD, capture, proposal management, and business writing. Every series of Optimize is hosted by an expert in their field who brings their expertise and real-life experience to each episode. This podcast series is hosted by Ton Wilson, President of Intellect. Ton is a renowned GovCon influencer who has spearheaded business processes and bid strategies that have clinched contracts worth over $150 billion to her clients. She is a bid strategist, executive coach, mentor, Marvel and DC enthusiast, and self-proclaimed bourbon lover. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe on wherever you are listening. Now let's join Ton on this episode.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our live Optimize podcast recording. We are closing out the VT Summit 23, and I'm so excited to have two of my industry partners, cohorts, partners in crime, here on the stage with me and on this podcast. We're going to talk about things that we've talked about already today. I'm going to close it up a little bit, and I know that I'm the only thing standing between you and the bar and buying me a bourbon, old-fashioned. So we're going to make it quick. We're going to do rapid fire, but we're going to keep it interesting and light because that's just kind of how I roll, right? So we've talked a lot about technology, and I am not going to make this AI focus. Sorry, Fergal, but Rebecca will do this for us, and I may have to cut her off. So I will go off script, but we do need to kind of touch on it, right? So there's so many different things about technology, and when we have leaders, because you're all leaders within your organization, when you come to these summits or you come to these industry events, you hear so incredible, like, new features and sexy things and tools and whistles. And they're like, oh my God, if I go back and take this to my, organization, we can do this and we can do that. It doesn't always happen like that, right? Like in a perfect world, everybody would be on the same page. But you've got different stakeholders who have maybe a different tool that they like, or they are reticent about adopting a tool. You've got some old schoolers, okay, not to be ageist, because, I'm up there too. But how do you bring back a technology like this to make sure that it's adopted at the enterprise level?
Yeah. So the last 5 years of my career before I jumped over into the tech world, I had been sought out from graduating businesses that had, graduated from the small business space into the large business space to come and build out proposal centers and business development centers for them. And that's a pretty tall order. You walk into, organizations that have cultures, and this is the way we've always done things, and also have operated in a very different arena than the large business competitive space. And so the best thing to do is to teach, right? I think there's a difference between going home or going back to your company and shoving information in people's faces or approaching things from I hate the word aggressive, but like a very, we have to do this kind of thing. But sharing information and teaching and training people about new ways to do things or different ways to do things. And, I think we've all worked with leaders or managers who sometimes it helps if it kind of becomes their idea. But that's a great way to do that, right? Is to just kind of share information and be like, what do you think about this? Because when I saw this, I thought some possibilities and capabilities for us. So I think really putting together a comprehensive package of information and training your organization as an approach to change is a very safe and smart way.
Marcia, how do you overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think it's, working from the line, which a lot of us are, right? We're the day-to-day users, the end users of these products. We're the ones who are benefiting from the innovations and the efficiencies that come through them. The leaders are who's paying the bills. And so definitely being able to demonstrate that there will be a return on investment of my time, back to your business, my ability to do my job better, not just faster, which is obviously a goal, but with better quality, with better reinforcement from my leadership that this is something that's going to improve our practice overall. So it's not just the personal innate benefit that these tools provide, it is what they provide back to the organization, but what you provide to the organization by being able to use that tool. So I think there's a little bit of self-advocacy there and kind of that safety in numbers as you're here with your peers and you're here with your colleagues and sharing those best practices amongst each other. When leadership hears that somebody else is doing it, they're going to want to do it too. So, as you can advocate, you can bring your spirit back to, in the enthusiasm that comes behind these products, but then you have to stick to it. You have to incorporate it into your business practice, and then you have to demonstrate the value in the short term and the long term so that they'll continue to invest.
So there was a term used by one of the attendees here that I loved was being process agnostic. And I always use the term tool agnostic, right? And so it doesn't matter what process I'm trying to, improve or what problem or, solution I'm trying to provide. I look at the process and what the problem is first. And then I decide, is there a tool to use to kind of solve that? Like in this whole, we've thrown out a lot of different types of tools here today. VisibleThread is a tool, Grammarly, there's so many out there. How do you pick the right tool for the process, or do you shape the process around a tool?
I love that question. People, process, tools, right? Or technology. There's an order there. The people have to know what they're doing. The process has to be in place in order for the tool to fit into the process. If you think you need a tool but you don't know why, you don't need a tool, you need a process. Once you figure out what step that is, then you find the tools that can help you make those steps be accomplished faster. That's that co-pilot philosophy, right? How can I use technology to make me better at my job, not to replace me from being able to do my job? So the way I see it is, your people need to understand kind of the gist. What do you need to get out of the process? They need to then develop that process before you can even consider what tool, because that tool might change what your process ends up being. Then it becomes a cycle.
And then let's pull that thread. I know you want to answer the question about
one
the tool.
Quick thing to say, we play a game called Keep, Kill, Need.
Okay.
Keep, Kill, Need. So if you have something that works, you keep it. If you have something that doesn't work, you kill it. And then if you don't have something, then you figure out what that need is.
Yes. That's a great advice. I'm going, you're not going to patent that one, right? Trademark. Okay. Oh, you get all the good hashtags. Let's pull this thread a little bit and go into the people element, right? A lot of times people think technology, we've talked a lot about this today. Technology is going to take over my job. I see it from a silver lining perspective. There's an endless amount of opportunities from as far as different roles now within an organization that wasn't there before, prompt engineers. Who knew, last year there was no such thing as a prompt engineer. So for our industry, because there's so many professionals here, what new roles and new professions do you see coming out of all this great technology and advances that we're having?
Yeah, that prompt engineering is such a great example. Even my job. So as I mentioned, I recently joined the tech industry. I was in federal proposals for over 13 years. And now I work for a tech startup. Is very different. But it's very cool. And so my title is director of training, but I'm designing training around something that's never existed before. And in a market that is new, in a technological landscape that is new. So there's a ton of possibilities there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for people in our industry. And I'm not telling you to quit your jobs tomorrow, but there are new doors opening. And so if you're like me, you see a door open a crack and you just kick it in and you run through it, right? Curiosity kills me every time. But stay aware of these things that are starting to change your landscape, because they will open different avenues. So prompt engineering, training, I think product awareness, start to get immersed in, and it doesn't even have to be and here I go talking about AI already, right? But I know It doesn't have to be AI either. I think that there are really interesting things that we can explore just as proposal professionals to think outside of the box as well. But I feel like prompt engineering, that is going to be the big one, because it goes back to what I was saying earlier about prompt smart and garbage in, garbage out. It's all about how we are manipulating the data we're inputting into these models. And unless you can do that with finesse and from an educated standpoint, they're not gonna produce what you're looking for.
Again, I've got to move away from AI and technology and back to people. But you've been involved in APMP and industry, for a while here. Where do you see the profession kind of growing? Because I think this is, with the new technology, it's been really great for our industry, and that now all of a sudden you can focus on less busy work and more on the quality aspects of it. And so I think what's really great that's come out of this is we're now able to pay more attention and focus more time on strategy and being really good at what are discriminators, and going back to really what wins contracts is to not only provide a compelling and compliant proposal, but one where you're showing and demonstrating value. So talk to me a little bit about, the elevating the profession on the we're more professional. We're not just busy work, beekeeper people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a proposal person in general, we all know what needs to happen in the proposal. And one of the speakers earlier today said, I'm going to give my capture manager what I need in order for them to get me a winning proposal. I will then create that winning proposal. That's always been my philosophy as well. We've got to work our way back. And so for us in the proposal industry to say, I don't have to spend my time creating a starter compliance matrix, I can research the customer. Or I can go back and read through the capture plan in a little bit greater detail. I can start using my own industry expertise to make this product better, not just in a functionality of a proposal document from a document management perspective, but from a content management perspective and an intelligence management perspective. I think those who find their time being opened up are going to be able to research more, learn more about their own organization and their own organizational capabilities, and become more of a subject matter expert from within, because we're not heads down clicking keyboards all day long. We're able to be more interactive with each other because the machines are doing what machines are built to do. And the human brain is going to be able to do what it was intended to do all along, bring the answers in.
And reinvest that time back into yourselves. I'm loud. Reinvest that time back into yourselves. Because we do have these capabilities that are going to further reduce the need for nights and weekends and for us juggling multiple opportunities at a time. Take the time to get certifications, do trainings, maybe learn something new, and keep yourself well. Because I feel like, especially in our industry, burnout is high. We talk about it all the time. I'm not going to say work-life balance. I'm not going to say it. It's a fallacy. It's a proverbial carrot we constantly chase, and it's a lie. Sorry. But it's true. And not just, in proposal industry, but American culture, the way that we work is very different from a European culture. We are taught early on to work ourselves into the ground. And if you are not pulling extra hours or whatever, being the top seller performer, then you are not successful. And that's not true. We're all successful in our own ways, and it looks different for everyone. So with these capabilities and with this time, keep yourselves well. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
100%. Preach, testify. I want to say work-life balance is more of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. If you put it in, you're going to suffer, right? So when Anatolia was speaking earlier and she said, we saved 70 hours of human labor by running VisibleThread. So for your team, for those 70 hours, did you then give them 70 hours more worth of work to do? Or did they get to go pick up their kids from practice this afternoon because they had time to do that? For us being, and I think it's a generational thing. I think we're, Gen X be what it is, we were driven, we were independent, we were latchkey kids. We're not going to deny that. We know what we need to do in order to get through our lives, and we're just not going to stop. So if the tool is giving us our time back, we owe it to ourselves to take that time. Speak with your leadership. You brought me a tool, it gave me more time. Does that mean I can do more proposals? No, it does not. We had, in one of my earlier jobs, I had a leader say, if I get you another proposal manager, how many more proposals can you do? My answer was none. My answer was, I will do the ones I'm already doing even better. Yeah. If you're not using that time that you get back to make your product better, you're just making more products not any better.
I've already lost control of my own podcast. I am really regretting my life decisions here today. So can I swap you out with Fergal or something? I don't know. At least I can control a man maybe a little bit better. This is what happens when you put 3 alphas who are Gen Xers up on the stage. But okay, so let's pull the whole like work-life balance. I said it. Fight me. Yes, work-life balance. It is a fallacy, right? And it's something that we teach our like, you know, our kids, and especially like women who are coming up. And I don't mean to be ageist or sexist or, you know, whatever, but I've been known to go there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we do have this fallacy that if you all of a sudden, you know, infuse all these efficiencies, like you said, you're going to like do more, but like do less, do what you're doing, but do it well and do it better. Right. How do you, with all these new technologies and all the challenges that we're facing, right? We've got an increasing workload. We've got this new technology that we're supposed to be integrating and understanding. And now we've got these new generation growing up who works differently, right? Like I'm so intrigued by people and how they're similar to what their generation stereotypes are, right? I'm a Gen Xer. Look it up. There's many, many Facebook pages about, you know, how like we're lucky to still be alive. But how do you manage millennials? How do you manage the Gen Zers? Like, you know, like how do you manage different groups of people who have different technology backgrounds? They operate very differently. Like if anything with COVID has kind of taught us is that some of us were not meant to work virtually. Like some of us were not meant like to work in a virtual environment. They need that creativity. They need that organic feedback. They need that connection. So how do we kind of embrace this brave new world that we have with all the challenges and still be successful?
Take the technology out of it. All right, Anatolia, I'm letting it fly. People are very people-y. Title of my future keynote. It's out now. People are very people-y, and if you've ever heard me present before, I've done a lot of presentations about leadership, and you can always count on that. But I could get a call right now that my son fell and broke his wrist, and it would drastically change the way I am showing up in front of you. And so there is a constant variable. The technology, the processes, take all of it out and focus on the people, right? And embrace how someone is showing up, even if it's wildly different than the way you are or the way you communicate. And that goes for leadership too, right? You may report to someone who is just a little different than you are, has different communication styles. But to the point, I think it really does boil down to leadership and acknowledging differences, and then also realizing that we are kind of, regardless of what your generation is or your personality style or anything like that, we're apparently alphas up here now. Thanks for that. You know, that we're all kind of in the same boat though still. We're all floating in the same boat, and with, you know, expectations, tools and things that are happening with us and around us. And I think when we remember that, and the other key word too is empathy. And that's not, unfortunately, I did a poll, I think it was last year, about whether empathy can be taught or not. And it was very interesting, mixed results. What? Right, you find that out too late, don't you? But what do you guys think? Raise your hand if you think empathy can be taught.
Ooh, interesting.
Can you teach true empathy?
It can be mimicked.
What? You can model it. I agree.
It can mimic it.
Unfortunately, and this is my not so professional opinion, I think true empathy, because of the human condition, is most often learned through significant trauma. That's unfortunate. Human condition. Speaking from someone who's to have lots of trauma. But it's interesting. Sometimes we have to be smacked in the face real hard before we're able to acknowledge another point of view. And it's unfortunate. So can you teach it? But you can certainly model it and at least be aware that we are all walking a very different path, but we come together on lots of things in lots of ways. And tools and technology is certainly one of them. And we're going to approach those differently as people too. So being open-minded.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, with people, it's play to the skill, train to the weakness. And so, I've managed several teams over the years, and folks come and go, and it's always, somebody's struggling. You might want to consider getting rid of them. You might need they're probably going to need to be replaced. No specific examples, but to say, let me try to fix them first. Yeah. Maybe they don't know. Maybe we've given something that we did not give them time to learn. We did not give them time to adapt or adjust, or maybe they just haven't figured it out yet. Maybe they have maybe they have a different learning style or a health issue or something that they need to get through personally. And as a manager, you can have those conversations one-on-one without getting HR involved. But you can also look at that individual, as a leader. What is their learning style? Would they do better with a mentor? Would they do better with, take some PTO and just dial it back a minute? How do you get to the best of what that person has to offer on that day at that time? If it becomes consistent, or you try to fix them, they revert back, then you've got a people issue. But probably you've got an attentive issue, a distraction issue, or something that is short-term, temporary, and can be resolved and fixed. If you don't try to fix the problem first, you're not going to solve the problem. You're not going to know what to do when the next person has that same issue.
Oh my gosh, we could sit and talk about this thread like forever, but I think this is a really good point for us to kind of close up a little bit, in that I view these challenges a little differently. Instead of trying to fix someone, look at their strengths. And so for those of you who are following me on LinkedIn, I'm going through a whole series right now where I talk about my 5 Clifton strengths. And so if those of you who are not familiar with Clifton strengths, I highly recommend, it's run by the Gallup industry, to go take it. You get 34, whatever, they should pay me at this point. Clifton Strengths by Gallup. And so learning people's strengths, I think, is really kind of key, because you want them to be successful, right? I don't think there's a manager out here who doesn't want their person to be, happy, successful, productive. And most people do inherently want to be a productive, useful, effective. And so instead of trying to fix them, or this is wrong, I'm going to mold you, this one-size-fits-all type of approach, is why not look at their uniqueness and kind of embrace that? And rethink, though, do you have the right person in the right spot? Because just because they're there, because they've inherited that position, or they drew the short stick and they got stuck there, that doesn't mean that they should be there, and that's the best use for, their strengths. And so I highly recommend that. And then when you map out your organization, you'll find how interesting, some of the stereotypes are, for that. So, but in any case, thank you so much for joining me here. I really hope that everyone found this useful. I think our podcast is going to be touching on a couple different things. Just to put a plug in for the next couple series, the first one that was out was Passing the Baton, talking about how do you make the transition from business development to capture to proposals. Riveting conversation with 2 other incredible alpha women too. That is out. And then the second podcast that we currently have is 2 MVP moms, where I speak to a colleague of mine who has 5 children. They're all in sports. She runs her own business, and she's starting a nonprofit organization too. So the story is unbelievable. And we talk about entrepreneurship and the challenges of being a mom, and life gets in the way, but you still have what you want to contribute. Upcoming podcasts, Fergal, you're going to get in the hot seat. We're going to talk AI. We're going to get all geeky about that. There's also another one on AI and cyber. You can't talk about AI without cyber. We're going to scare you a little bit. We're going to give you some really cool tidbits on that. And God, there's so many other topics. So if there's anything that you want to hear about that we haven't talked about, because this is meant to be a podcast that reflects industry and all the topics that we're interested in, because we are more than just proposal capture BD people. So thank you so much for joining, and I'm going to hand this over and end the podcast.
And that wraps up this episode of the Optimize podcast. A big shout out to our amazing host, Ton Wilson, and our guests, Rebecca Link and Marcia Watson. Optimize is brought to you by VisibleThread, the language analysis platform that helps you improve the efficiency and compliance of RFPs, contracts, and mission-critical business writing. Using VT Writer and VT Docs can be game-changing for efficiency and compliance in your documents. For more information, visit VisibleThread.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you are listening. Stay tuned for more insightful discussions on the Optimize podcast. Until next time, thanks for joining us.